One of the other key stylized facts, which is important because there's been a substantial amount of public investment in this activity, is the fact that property-based institutions are found to actually add value. I had my own study of the effectiveness of firms on science parks, and it was very careful control group, match pair sample, done in a fairly rigorous way econometrically. We found that firms that were located on university science parks tended to be significantly more productive in their research and in commercialization than comparable firms that were not located on such facilities. We've reported similar, in our journal, similar findings for incubators. There's a little less evidence on incubators and accelerators than on science and technology parks. But this is an important result because that's part of the, getting back to what I said earlier about the evaluation of public investment in R&D, it's important that it be documented that these facilities are actually adding value from a policy standpoint. Another key stylized fact, again from the academic literature, is that incentives matter. So if you want your university to be more entrepreneurial, you have to change the incentive structure of the university. You have to reward faculty for being engaged in commercialization, including promotion and tenure, so I would disaggregate this into pecuniary incentives. So you've got to make the royalty distribution formula more attractive to the faculty, to give them a financial incentive to get involved, and maybe to attract other faculty from other schools. The second is you have to also think about the non-pecuniary rewards, because scientists want recognition. They want to be promoted and tenured, and they want to be recognized by their peers. And so this is important. Also, organizational practices and institutional policies matter, and I'll talk about what some of those might be. We know that universities are increasingly focused on entrepreneurship. I've said that before, so I won't go over that. One very interesting finding, which is contrary to the popular wisdom about the role, this is the concern that you hear from people who say, well, universities shouldn't be working with industry. It should be an ivory tower. We should just do basic research, and we shouldn't really ask, get involved with industry because it's going to take faculty away from their basic research. Well, guess what? When you actually look, you do an empirical analysis, and there are now at least 4 or 5 published studies, including 2 in our journal. What you find is that academics who get involved in commercialization and entrepreneurship are not less productive in their research. They're doing just as much quantitative and basic research, however you measure that, whether it's by publications and ideally citations. They're not less productive after getting involved in this process. And we actually heard another paper on that yesterday that also documented that. So that's not really an issue. Now, there's another policy issue, which, and this is a paper that I just published recently. What we looked at academic entrepreneurship and asked the question, are scientists who are domestic versus scientists who are foreign-born? And what we found is that the scientists that were foreign-born were more likely to engage in academic entrepreneurship. Now, if you support academic entrepreneurship, and I think most people here do, that has implications for your immigration policy. You want to have a more open immigration policy as it relates to scientists and engineers, because they add value to the economy, in theory. If they're doing academic entrepreneurship effectively, then they're helping create new companies and new firms and thus eventually new jobs in your economy. You don't want to shut them out because they tend to be the more entrepreneurial academics or scientists. Also, social networks are important. Many universities and regions are trying aggressively to recruit star scientists, and there are now some very important initiatives, regional initiatives in different states in America. Those are the ones I'm most familiar with, that provide special incentives for universities to attract star scientists. And this is very important because the star scientists come along with a social network of their own. And it's been shown, very rigorous empirical analysis has been shown that those types of star scientists generate tremendous economic benefits to the region because those in their network are starting new companies, their former students, their current students even, are starting companies, developing new technologies, and commercializing innovations in the region. So there is a rationale for doing that. Now, when we did our qualitative research, and this has been confirmed now in many, many studies, because we are concerned about best practices, we were concerned about kind of figuring out what the major impediments are. I think the most important impediment is the existence of institutional and cultural barriers between the university and firms. Firms and entrepreneurs have a different mindset than university administrators and scientists and engineers at the university, let's say. The firms and entrepreneurs want to get their products to the market as quickly as possible to make money, and that's what they're charged with doing, so that's very important. Whereas the university administration tends to be bureaucratic at times and tends to slow down the process. Also, I think many companies don't understand the culture of universities and the politics within the universities. I say this because when I think of the importance of politics in universities, I think to one of my idols, who you would probably not associate with university administration, named Dwight David Eisenhower, who's President of the United States. And what many people don't know about Eisenhower is that he was president of Columbia University in 1952 when he ran for president. So he's one of only 2 US presidents who served as president of a university and then president of the country. The other was Woodrow Wilson, who was president of Princeton. And Eisenhower was once asked, soon after he was elected president of the United States, he was visited by an influential alumnus who knew him at Columbia. And the alumnus innocently asked him the question, he said, "Mr. President, how do you like your new job as president of the United States as opposed to your old job as president of Columbia University?" And the president looked at him and laughed and said that one thing that he liked about his new job, as opposed to his old job, was that his new job was much less political. So that's really a major lesson. And I don't think that firms understand that there's the politics within a university, colleges competing against each other. And I'll talk more about ways you overcome that in a few minutes. But universities are very highly political institutions. The second Eisenhower story relates to the first day he's in office, okay, as president of Columbia. Now remember, this is a guy who's been in the military his whole life, command and control, and he's been ordering around people like Montgomery and Patton, and he's used to being in command. And he gets a visit the first day in office from Columbia's most illustrious professor at the time, who was Isidore Rabi, who was a physicist, who was a Nobel laureate. He was #2 on the Manhattan Project. I mean, this is an eminent scholar. And he goes in and he says, "Hi, Mr. President, I just wanted to say hello to you on your first day in office." And Eisenhower just looked at him and said, "Well, it's really nice to meet one of the employees of the university." Okay, and Rabi was taken aback, of course. And he said to Eisenhower, he said, "Mr. President, the faculty are not employees of the university. the faculty are the university. So that's really the second lesson that's important when you're trying to stimulate technology commercialization and academic entrepreneurship, is you have to incentivize the faculty, because administrators can talk all day and babble about all these initiatives and talk about the importance of it. But at the end of the day, it's the professors really who drive what actually happens in terms of outcomes. And you have to incentivize them to get involved. So that's very important. And I've talked about some of the ways you would get around that already. I also believe that there's a lot that needs to be done to improve the career paths of technology transfer officers. This has to be treated seriously as a professional position. And there has to be a professional track for people engaged in this activity. These people have a very important function. They're intermediaries, they're boundary spanners, they have a very difficult job. They have to deal with the three different constituencies, right? The scientists, the university administration, and the firms and the entrepreneurs. And they need some help. And then we also need more education and training. If we want to promote academic entrepreneurship, we have to educate the faculty and the students and the postdocs and everyone involved in the research enterprise. You know, we heard before, right, the Vice President for Innovation say, we are graduating PhDs and they can't get jobs. Well, if we were creating more companies, if we were stimulating more academic entrepreneurship, there would be more opportunities for those engaged in the research enterprise who don't want to be pure scientists, who would be attracted to commercialization. It hasn't been presented to them as a possibility, and that's where the education comes in. And I believe that this is important because we don't want people to go outside the system. We want them to work through the technology transfer office, and we want to make that process as smooth as possible. How am I doing on time? Oh, another 10 minutes? Oh, okay. Now, really what that means is that universities have to think about a strategy for academic entrepreneurship and technology commercialization. They really have to think about this in a serious way, and many are starting to do that. That was one of the things that was so, sort of heartwarming for somebody like me to see at this Johns Hopkins conference that the people who are running these operations at the major research universities in America had a formal strategy for it, and were not just formulating the strategy, but implementing it and using some management theories to guide them. And that's useful. But I think it starts with setting priorities and goals. And that means, how important is this to the mission of the university? It's a part of your mission as a public university, but do you want to enhance that? Do you want to have this as a more important dimension of that? And that should be reflected in the resources that are allocated to this. I think resources should be shifted to these activities. Again, because I'm convinced that they generate high social returns. This gets back to my point about targeting investment. Well, the university itself has resources. You want to target it to those activities that generate the highest social returns. In my opinion, that's academic entrepreneurship. And it should be reflected in the budget. Strategy also relates to the different modes of tech transfer, and we're seeing that there's a lot of heterogeneity in terms of which mode the university selects, whether it's patenting, licensing, startups, or, as many public universities are doing, stressing the economic development aspects of technology commercialization and academic entrepreneurship. And some universities are doing that. Implementation issues are also important, because that's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to really making these policies effective. That means thinking about things like how to improve information flows, have town hall meetings, constantly interacting with industry, making sure that industry understands the culture and the politics of the university, and is able to work around that, to work effectively with the university. Organizational design and structure is critical. If it's a very, very large university, some universities have decentralization in tech commercialization and tech transfer. Example would be Johns Hopkins again, which has a separate tech transfer operation for its applied physics laboratory, which is the largest conductor of federal research in America, its medical school, and then the rest of the university. Why? Because tech transfer in life sciences is different than tech transfer in engineering or in physics and other kinds of physical sciences. It's going to be a lot different. Also now, we're seeing a lot of tech transfer in the arts, humanities even, in entertainment, in music, in areas where you normally wouldn't really, not just in areas where there's patenting and that kind of activity. HRM practices, improving those, as I mentioned earlier, especially for the tech transfer personnel and for those that you want to induce to be involved in academic entrepreneurship, changing reward systems. And then there are implementation issues that depend on the mode of technology transfer that you're stressing. So for example, if the university is stressing entrepreneurship, I have argued that they should be relying on surrogate entrepreneurs and bringing entrepreneurs to the community. But I think that, again, thinking about recommendations is, I think it's important for the university to stress entrepreneurship, and that's going to be what I discuss in the remainder of my talk. How you do that, moving away from stressing patenting and licensing, and thinking more broadly about the role of entrepreneurship and encouraging entrepreneurship on the campus. Now that means, of course, changing incentives. I can't stress the importance of that enough. And rewarding academic entrepreneurs and using them as mentors for the junior faculty that are not as, weren't trained or conditioned to behave that way. I think the more open immigration policy that I mentioned for scientists and engineers clearly promotes academic entrepreneurship. It's important to increase women and minorities in academic entrepreneurship. This was one of the clear findings of the small evaluation of the Small Business Innovation Research Program that we did, the national evaluation, is that women and minorities were underrepresented in academic entrepreneurship, and thinking about ways to incentivize that and change that. And then recognizing that entrepreneurship and research, education, and community-based initiatives are key complements. If you believe in what I'm saying, which is that the university is the intermediary here, thinking more broadly, the nation needs to stimulate entrepreneurial innovation, right? Because that's going to generate higher economic growth. Well, the university is the key intermediary to make entrepreneurial innovation a reality. That means that entrepreneurship has to be stressed in the curriculum, it has to be stressed in research, and it has to be stressed in community-based initiatives. And I'll talk about that, because give you some examples. It also really, if you even want to think about it more broadly, I'm talking about developing an entrepreneurial culture at the university and in the region. And the university is the key player to make that happen. And I'm seeing some evidence of that on campus today. I see, you have all these initiatives. They're not just focused on this institution alone, but they're focused on other institutions in the region and nationally. It's important to be engaged with corporations too, because we've talked a lot about small firms and academic entrepreneurship, but let's not forget that there's also corporate entrepreneurship. The original incubators were supported by Control Data Corporation, which was a large corporation in America, and they really wanted to support corporate venturing and corporate entrepreneurship. So the university benefits from its corporate partnerships, and I think the corporations do too. Again, I'd like to see some evaluation of that. I haven't seen anything that's really rigorous, and that needs to be done, but I'm convinced that in fact it is a positive relationship. Getting back to entrepreneurship on campus, we have to also realize that entrepreneurship is now a legitimate subject of inquiry. It's now a legitimate academic field. It has its own journals. It's attracting a lot of really great academics from different social science disciplines, different fields of business administration. And it's really an academic field. And this is important. Getting back to my stories about Eisenhower at a research university, the professors have to respect entrepreneurship as an academic field. Otherwise, they're going to think of this as just some kind of, non-serious subject. And in fact, it is. There's theory and there's very good empirical work being done on this topic. And we're trying as hard as we can to develop it as an academic field. What can universities do? Working with corporations, I would say, to develop a curriculum that focuses on technological entrepreneurship, if that's your objective. Well, one way is to really focus on entrepreneurship as a serious area of research involving multiple disciplines, which it does: psychology, sociology, economics, finance, other fields. Entrepreneurship cuts across academic disciplines. It applies in marketing, it applies in finance, it applies in accounting, it applies in just almost any field. And doing evaluation. This is why I think setting up a center or some kind of institute that would do serious evaluations would be of great, great importance. Whether that's evaluations of innovation, and there are some examples in Great Britain, as we know, right? You have SPRU for innovation. You have a cluster at the University of Manchester. The university, particularly the research university, is the natural home for an entity like that. But also research that's relevant to practitioners. And what's interesting about entrepreneurship, I think, is that a lot of the academic research is of great interest to practitioners, unlike some other academic subjects. So this is an advantage. And possibly setting up, doing a bunch of research conferences on this to signal the importance of it, and also maybe setting up a PhD program. By the way, there's lots of academic jobs in entrepreneurship. I felt like saying to the vice president, tell your faculty here to do research in entrepreneurship, and there's plenty of academic jobs. Because people are interested in this topic in different ways. What can be done at the institutional level? Setting up property-based institutions, and many institutions have already done these things, but incubators, accelerators, science, technology parks, linking technology transfer offices to business schools, setting up knowledge clusters, having angel networks in the area, developing that. We did that when I was in Riverside. We developed an angel network around the university. Setting up venture forums on campus, getting corporations and potential investors on campus to observe the research, the outcomes of the research. I think it's important from an administrative standpoint, if the university really values entrepreneurship, to set up an administrative position in entrepreneurship. Sometimes this is called different things. Some universities now have provosts or something at that level, a vice president, for collaborations with industry and entrepreneurship, something along those lines. And again, change incentives. Change incentives. I've said that now many, many times, both pecuniary and non-pecuniary incentives. I think there's a tremendous potential also from an academic standpoint in treating technology commercialization and the management of intellectual property as a field, developing executive master's programs in technology commercialization and the management of intellectual property is important. Because now this has become a new industry where you have individuals at institutions, at incubators, accelerators, science parks, medical schools, federal labs, hospitals, I could go on, who are involved in the creation of intellectual property and the management of it. There are very few focused graduate programs in this arena. I think having more courses in entrepreneurship has been demonstrated as something that leads to more academic entrepreneurship. We found on our campus, which does not have a tradition of supporting entrepreneurship, that 75% of our students want at least a course or a program in entrepreneurship. And 50% of our students are thinking about starting their own companies. But entrepreneurship is not just the domain of the business school. It's got to be across the campus in all kinds of areas, not just in engineering and business, but in the humanities and the social sciences, across the whole campus. In education, we heard yesterday, early childhood education. It springs up all over the place. I have a particular, belief and that evaluation and assessment tools are important for those engaged in these kinds of activities, and those should be matrixed into the courses. Technology, commercial familiarization, internships. It's important to note that everyone thinks that technology transfer only comes from universities to industry. Well, in fact, that's not true. A lot of technology transfer comes from industry to universities. And I saw the best example of that when I was at Arizona State, and we were close to Intel. And Intel had a major research facility, and faculty would do sabbaticals at Intel so they could work on the research equipment that Intel had at the time that was state of the art. We see that in our region now. We have one of the largest basic research labs is General Electric's lab in Niskayuna, and faculty at my institution and institutions in the region will do sabbaticals at GE, again, because the research that's being done there is state of the art, and the faculty who come back from those sabbaticals, let's say, and have partnerships with industry scientists tend to do much better once they come back from those stints. And so that's important. Having business plan competitions on campus with the support of the business community, having a venture forum, as I mentioned earlier. And this is what we're trying to do at my university. Now I'm into the shameless self-promotion aspect. Conclude with that. And again, this has to do with politics of the universities. I think when I came to the business school did not have a really strong emphasis on entrepreneurship. In fact, it had virtually zero emphasis on it. And what I saw occurring, which is occurring around the globe, is that universities have effectively made the case that they are engines of economic development. And at our university, we have a nanotechnology cluster that has attracted a substantial, over $3 billion in public and private investment in the nanotechnology cluster at our university. It's generally regarded as the #1 nanotechnology school in the world. And what I see is, what can business schools do to promote economic development? And I was going to try to, and really more generally to promote entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship leads to economic development. That's really what I mentioned before, the entrepreneurial innovation. The key tactic that I've employed is collaboration. The only way to successfully implement these kinds of strategies is to work with other colleges on campus. This is, again, the politics of the university. And work with other colleges and universities in the region. And you've got a partnership here. And I would hope that the partnerships that have emerged from this initiative would be targeted to academic entrepreneurship, to promote entrepreneurship at each of the campuses, and regionally and nationally. You would work together on that. And this is not a zero-sum game. You know, part of the problem at universities is that people don't want to collaborate because they view everything as a zero-sum game. Well, this is not a zero-sum game because there are tremendous funding opportunities. Once you stress entrepreneurship, your alumni, those who fund you are receptive to that because they understand the economic value of stressing entrepreneurship. And we've done that in a lot of different ways. We have an undergraduate or minor in entrepreneurship now. We have entrepreneurship as a sort of track in our MBA program. We also have a nanotechnology track in our MBA program to feed off the nanotechnology investment. We've started the New York State Business Plan, Student Business Plan competition, which has been very successful, and we've raised a tremendous amount of money for that competition. And that's a collaboration with other schools in the region. We're collaborating with community colleges. That's important. We're also actively engaged in life sciences entrepreneurship. We have an RNA Institute, which is a drug discovery unit, and we are partnering with them in many ways, educationally, and also we have a corporate sponsor named Thermo Fisher who has supported a student venture fund. That's $134,000 in prize money. It's a very substantial amount of investment. What I like about this business plan competition is it doesn't just fund commercialization, it funds research. So we convinced the donor that this is important for their research. This is a partnership with an industry, industry supporter, and they have supported that. We are also sponsoring entrepreneurial finance research conferences. Now we're talking about private equity, venture capital, the agents that I talked about before who are supporting early stage investments in technology and in academic entrepreneurship in many ways. And what we've done at those conferences is also bring alumni to campus. And that has several benefits for us. Financially, we've had more donations, of course. Secondly, they become more engaged with the university. So entrepreneurship and academic entrepreneurship allows the university to be more engaged with its alumni. Because if I say two words to an alumnus, entrepreneurship and students, they love that. They love to support any kind of initiative that relates to entrepreneurship and to students. We've also launched what I would think of as a social entrepreneurship program called Small Enterprise for Economic Development. This is a very unique program that provides microloans to mostly women and minority entrepreneurs in the inner cities. We argued that most of the economic development initiatives are targeted to technology-based firms. This initiative is not targeted to technology-based firms and is focused on the inner city and focuses on what C.K. Prahalad called the bottom of the pyramid. And we just received a couple months ago for this program the Tribeca Disruptive Innovation Award. The Tribeca Film Festival takes place in Manhattan, and the guy who runs this is a big fan of Clayton Christensen's work, and he has these awards that he does every year. And only 3 American universities received this award this year: MIT, Stanford, and the University at Albany. And so we were very proud of that. It's also the first time that my daughter has actually expressed any interest in my academic work because at the same event, they also provide awards to entertainers who use technology. Justin Bieber was receiving an award, so all of a sudden she wanted to go and see that. But and then the last initiative that I'll talk about, which I think would be useful here as well, which is why I'm going to talk about it, is the Young Entrepreneurs Academy. This is really designed to develop an entrepreneurial culture in the region. It doesn't involve our students. It's a program that brings middle and high school students, so students aged, let's say, 12 to 17, to campus to learn how to start a real company, okay, with real investors, registered companies. So this is a very hard program. We really do a very careful job of selecting the students for this program because they have to be very, very serious about entrepreneurship. And it's a 9-month program. Our instructor is the head of our Small Business Development Center. So this is not just, write a fictional business plan. These are real businesses. And it's been incredibly successful. We've attracted a very large number of students into this program. But more importantly, it's helping to develop the entrepreneurial culture in the region. And we have a very generous sponsor of this program, and it's been very useful. And it's part of this idea that I mentioned before of building the culture of entrepreneurship, not just at the university, but in the region. I do have to say that our faculty and our staff and our students are involved in this program as well, as mentors of the entrepreneurs. Our alumni are also involved as investors. So this is a way to engage your alumni in entrepreneurship on campus. Again, the other program that I mentioned before also involves, the SEED program also involves alumni. And one of the things I should mention about the SEED program also is that we had support from the private sector. We have a private donor, which is a credit union that's providing the money that we're lending to entrepreneurs. We have Empire State Development, which is the economic development arm of New York State, supporting the project. We just got another grant a few weeks ago because we sold this as an economic development program, and we've built evaluation into the design. Okay, that's what convinced them. What convinced them to support this was that we had evaluation built into the design. So if you are going to run an initiative like this, you should really think very carefully about how to do the evaluation. And that's going to impress the funders because it says these people are really thinking very seriously, not just about running this program, but how to make it more effective. And another interesting feature of this program, which is really why one of the reasons why we won the award, in addition to the fact that we were measuring the outcomes, I think they were impressed with that, is the fact that it's a partnership between the School of Business and the School of Social Welfare, which have never partnered on anything in the past. So this is a good example of what I said before of collaboration. Those are some of my thoughts about academic entrepreneurship. It looks to me like you have a lot of the ingredients here to be successful, and those are some ideas, to make it even more effective. And I would thank you very much.